right, good morning. We are in week 3 of Lent. 40 days to a new you. Anyone feeling newer yet as we go through Lent? What we're looking at together as we are going through the season of Lent, as we prepare for resurrection, is this idea of transformation. How are we transformed? We've been looking each week so far at stories of 40 in the Bible. 40 is a highly symbolic number in the Bible. So we've been pulling out all these stories, all these references to the number 40, and then asking, what does it mean for me in my life today? Now, today, I titled this sermon, Everything Starts Where It Ends. It comes from a band I used to listen to quite a bit in college, probably one of my favorite album titles ever. Anyone ever hear the band Love Drug? You can Spotify it. Their second album, Everything Starts Where It Ends, and I have absolutely loved the title of that for, 20 plus years. Finally get to use it as a sermon title. So this has been a title in the making for 25 years. Now, as we said, Lent is this time of reflection, time of preparation as we prepare for new life. We move through death in order to receive new life and resurrection. So we are in the difficult period of the church calendar right now, but it's okay because we know that resurrection is coming, and we will be celebrating resurrection on April 20th right here in this theater, and I hope you will join us for that Sunday because that is a joyous event as we all celebrate resurrection together. But today, we're still in Lent. So we're still in the tomb. So we're not quite there yet, because in order to get to resurrection, you have to go through a death first, the uncomfortable parts. What I want to talk about this morning is I want to talk about the first 3 kings of Israel. We have Saul, David, Solomon, and I picked out for us 3 verses that I'm sure these are your devotional verses that you go back to time and time again. If anyone has life verses, I'm sure these you have memorized because these in your mind will be so transformative. Here's the first one for us. Acts chapter 13. After this is Paul talking about the early kings, the early life history of Israel. After this, God gave them judges until the time of Samuel the prophet. Then the people asked for a king, and God gave them Saul as the king of the tribe of Benjamin, who ruled 40 years. You'll know where this sermon is going, right? Second verse for us. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. Third king, Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel. How long? 40 years. Have we noticed a pattern yet? Maybe you're wondering, what is up with that number 40? We have Saul 40 years, David 40 years, Solomon 40 years. What does this mean for us today? As we've been looking at together, 40 signifies a new beginning. 40 is a new cycle. You have one period in time, one period in history, and that ends, and then there's a new period. There's a new beginning. There's a new cycle. In the Bible, 40 meant there was a whole new generation. Israelites wandered in the wilderness for how long? 40 years, because they needed the new before they were ready to enter into the promised land. So 40, again, as we have been looking at, I hope you never read the Bible in the same way. Whenever you come across the number 40 in the Bible, I hope that you hear sirens, lights start to flash, and it tells you there is something of significance here in this story. There's a reason why 40 is, as we'll call it, the magic number. Anyone play lotto, the 40 in the lotto yet? You gone to the gas station, you're like, hey, I'm going to put 40. You will. Let me know how that goes. All right, just giving you tips, all right? Remember who you heard it from, please. We have Saul, David, Solomon, the first 3 kings of Israel. 40 years, 40 years, 40 years. The end of 40, there is a leadership change. Let's think about it within the context of our country. Every 4 years, we have a new cycle. Typically, obviously, president can go 2 terms, but whenever there is a change in the president, there are new policies that are put in place. There's new ways of ordering society that have different effects on people. There's new ways in which the country is being led. So we know a bit about leadership changes. You have Saul, he led one way. Then you had David, and he led another way. David dies, his son Solomon takes over, and things look a bit different. So we know what this means on the larger scale, but I don't want to talk about that this morning. I want to bring it down to your life. What could these verses possibly mean for you and your life in this season of Lent as we talk about transformation? Here's what I want to talk about. Life is seasonal. Have you ever noticed this? When you think about your life, where you've been, what you've experienced, your life exists in seasons. Seasons begin, seasons end. They may not be 40 years, but there's these new cycles, these new beginnings. What's the title of our sermon? Everything what? Starts where it ends. Something ends, a season in your life ends, and then there is a new 40. There's a new beginning, which obviously brings up good news and bad news. For some of you, this is good news. When you think about the season that you're in right now, you're like, okay, I can do this. This season will eventually end. As difficult as this season might be, the hardships that I'm going through, well, I know eventually at some point, this season will end and something new will begin. So that's good news that some of you are holding on to. But then for some of you, this is bad news because you love the season that you're in. And you're thinking, I wish this season would never end. I wish this way of being, this way of living, where I am right now would just continue forever and that there would be no end. So the fact that seasons begin, seasons end, it's a bit mixed. Good news, bad news. What I want to look at is the story of David in order to pull out 3 truths about seasons. 1 Samuel chapter 16. Speaking about Samuel the prophet, Saul is the king at this point in the story. We have the first king of Israel, Saul. Is he well liked? No. For a time, the Israelites are like, we want a king. We want someone to rule us. Saul is given. The biblical account is not very kind to Saul. And the Israelites are hoping for a new king to take his place. Samuel sent and brought him David. Now, David was ruddy. This is a great dating profile. I'm ruddy, beautiful eyes, and was handsome. And he enjoyed long walks on the beach. The Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. David, at this point in the story, any idea about how old he is? Maybe about 10 or 15 years old. How is that for pressure? You're 12 years old and it's like, you're going to become king. Let me anoint you right now. Now, this verse that we looked at a bit earlier, David was how old when he became king? So imagine, let's go to the older age. Imagine that he's 15. He's anointed. You will be the king. You are God's chosen. You are the person who everyone will look to for leadership. You're the person that is going to replace this king that people don't really like so much. 15 doesn't become king until how old? If we do the math, how many years is he waiting? 15 or so years. Now, how did David live in this season of waiting? On the run? I mean, that's the question for us because we're always waiting. We're waiting for the next. We're in this season. We know it's going to change eventually. So waiting is just part of the human experience. We're always waiting for that which comes next. How did David do in his time of waiting? 15 years. I mean, think about that. You're going to be king. I mean, it's not like, hey, you're going to become the bookkeeper at this bank over here. Like, you are going to be the king of a nation. There's some big shoes to fill right here. 1 Samuel 24. Remember, Saul is the king. Here's an encounter that David has with Saul. He, speaking about Saul, came to the sheep pens along the way. You've all been there, right? You're walking along, you're driving along, you see the sheep pens over there on the right-hand side, and you see a cave there, and you just had some really bad Taco Bell, so you pull over by the sheep pen to go into the cave to relieve yourself. We've all had that experience before. Now, I love the details in the Bible. Now, David and his men, they happen to be in this cave. They're in the back, and they're like, whoa, what's that grunting? What's that noise? What is going on here? And so the men, all of David's men, they said, this is the day, speaking to David, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Remember, David is promised, you're going to become the king. You are the person that God has anointed, that God has chosen to become the king. Saul is in a vulnerable position, and David's men are like, hey, now's your chance. You can take the throne in this moment. Saul is unarmed. His men aren't around. He has sent them away because he wants his privacy. Now is your chance. The thing that you have been waiting for. The day which you have been waiting for years. The moment for you to finally step into your identity. To step into your true purpose. David goes, cuts a piece of the robe, but then he feels bad about having cut off the corner of the robe. David has some character here. His men are all pushing him. David does this, but then he feels bad about it. And so he says, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed. No one likes Saul. And yet, David, promised king, says, I can't do this. Because at this moment, Saul is the Lord's anointed. I know my time will come, but my time isn't here yet. With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. Saul left the cave and he went his way. Here is the first truth about seasons. We have 3 of them for us this morning. You cannot rush or force your way out of a season. And we've probably all been there before, where we do everything within our power to move into the next. We don't like what we're going through. It's difficult. There's too much waiting. We've waited long enough. And we do everything in our power to force our way into the new cycle, the new beginning, the next that sometimes we think we're entitled to. I've been here long enough. I've been in this space for years. It's time for me to move forward. You have to let each season unfold in its own time. I read this book probably 6-7 years ago, Diana Butler Bass. She writes on religion, specifically Christianity. And for a while, she has been an author, a lecturer. She would travel all around the country. She would lecture. She would talk about the Bible. She would talk about Christianity. She loved that life. Then she had kids. And that season of life that she had been in, it sort of ended, and she moved into a new season. And she describes how it felt to be in this new season. She's sitting on her porch at this point in the story. And this was very memorable for me because I had just had kids. So this was early on in my experience of having kids where I had young kids. And the life that I had before those kids, it was no more. I was in a new season. And so I totally resonated with what she said. And obviously, this has stuck with me because I haven't picked up the book in like 5 or 6 years, but as I was going through the sermon, I grabbed the book off my shelf and I found this quote because I think this beautifully depicts what it means to not rush forward or force our way into a new season. This is her speaking. I feared I was losing the life I had. You ever been there before? You had this life, this way of living, this way of being. Then there's this fear that I was losing the life that I had only just found. I cried when I realized I had not touched my suitcase or book bag in months. They had been replaced by a diaper bag. My husband surprised me a few weeks later with a new briefcase saying, "You'll need it soon enough. The seasons will turn eventually." I talked to Brother Robert, a friend who was a monk, about my fear that I would never write another column, never speak at another conference, and never write the book I had always wanted to write. He wisely said, "This season will not last forever." And some of you need to hear that this morning. This season you're in, it will not last forever. But give this time to your home and baby, this moment. And I think this is how we all want to live. This moment, this season, it's a gift. And God is with you in this moment, in this season. Wherever you happen to be, God is present with you. Whenever we try to force our way out of a season, and these notes, this slide right here, this is all learned experience, and you have to do it the wrong way in order to actually learn some truths. You notice this? You can't just comprehend something, you have to go through it, and often we have to get it wrong. We have to, in this case, force our way out of a season because I have been there. But whenever you are trying to be somewhere other than where you are, because remember, we talked about this last week, you can only be in how many places at once? Life 101. You can only be in one place at this moment in time. So if you're here, you can't be there. If you're there, you can't be here. So whenever we try to be somewhere other than where we are, whenever we try to be in a different season, whenever we try to force our way or rush out of a season, here's what I've come to discover it does. It produces fear, anxiety, and envy. Because then we begin to compare ourselves. Well, look at what they're doing. Look at the life that they have. Yeah, but they're in a different season of life. So what I've learned is that whenever I try to force my way into a new cycle, a new season, a new 40, it produces fear, anxiety, and envy. Think about David's men in the cave. What did they want to do? They wanted David to rise up and take over the throne. They were impulsive. But David said, no, there's another way. David was okay in the waiting. David trusted God in the waiting. He trusted that God was with him in this season and that his time would eventually come, whenever that happened to be. David allowed the season that he was in to unfold naturally. Now, this leads us to our second truth about seasons. You will only see the gifts of this season if you remain present to it. And a disclaimer, you will never get these gifts back. If we are not present to this season, and every season has its own gifts, even those difficult seasons, they have little seedlings of gifts. Sometimes that's what it feels like. It's not a full flower, but there's seeds that are there. That if you're present to what you're going through, if you're present to what God is teaching you in this moment, how the Spirit is inviting you to live, that's how you will see the gifts that are present to you right here, right now. And if we miss them, we will never get those gifts back. I was reading this author, philosopher Ken Wilber, and I just absolutely love what he says here. We lie about the richness of the present. And that's the phrase that I want us to grasp onto. The richness of the present. This moment that you are experiencing right now, every moment that you are experiencing, it is rich. It is deep. It has depth to it. It has gifts. We lie about the richness of this that we are experiencing by projecting ourselves backward in guilt, forward in anxiety. How often do we actually live in the present? So often we're back there, thinking about those conversations that we had, or how we've blown it in the past, or we're somewhere in the future, anxious about what's to come, forcing our way out of a season. We lie, we miss, we can't comprehend, we can't see the richness of the present when we're back there or when we're over here. This season that you're in, no matter how difficult it might be, it has gifts that it's offering for you to see. You will only see those if you remain in the present. January 2022. So in 2021, many of you know our house blew up and we had to move out of our house for about 9 months, live with my in-laws. We had major renovations that needed to happen, major issues, problems with the house. Finally moved back at the end of January 2021. In January 2022, Steph ended up getting sick. She was dealing with pneumonia, sickness. So I ended up, just out of necessity, spending more time with the kids. We had young kids, very young kids at that point. And I remember when Steph and I were talking about the situation, one of the things that she said, which is so profound, was, it's like, this is a gift for you. Like, it's not great that I'm sick. Obviously, no one wants to be sick. You don't want to go through that. But what was happening was, for those 9 months where I was just dealing with contractors constantly, I wasn't as present to my kids as I would have liked, because I had other obligations. I had other things I needed to do. I remember one of the first weeks that we were living with my in-laws, I came home late one night and my son goes to me. He's like, "Oh, I haven't seen you much in this house." So that was kind of how those couple of months went, where I needed to be at the house because I needed to make sure that things were progressing, things were moving along, and that everything was getting fixed properly. But then in 2022, it's as if that time was being redeemed. It was a difficult season, but the gift for me in that season was being able to spend some more time with my kids, where I hadn't in that previous season, but now it's like I was beginning to reclaim some of that lost time. You will only see the gifts that are present now if you are here in this moment, not looking at everything that's going wrong, because sometimes we fixate on that, and that just destroys all the gifts that are with you in this moment. But being present, having your eyes opened to the invitations that are being offered right here and right now. And then the third truth about seasons: you have to leave the previous season behind before you can fully embrace the new season. David was 30 years old when he became king. He reigned 40 years. Do you think David's life changed when he became king? He was living life one way, then he became king. The things that he was doing before becoming king, well, he had different responsibilities. He had different obligations. If he tried being the same person that he was before he was the king, how do you think his kingship would have gone? He needed to fully step into and fully embrace his kingship. Whoops, wrong way here. Now, how then do we embrace this season? 2 ways. First, complete any unfinished business from your previous season. Sometimes we have 1 foot in the previous past season and 1 foot in the current season. That will not go well. It's as if you're trying to be 2 different people. As you enter into a new season, as you realize that one season is ending and a new season is beginning, you need to acknowledge that which you're losing. Because every new season, as enjoyable as it might be, it requires, or inevitably, it just results in certain losses. For David, I'm sure he was excited about becoming king, but ways of doing things, people that he used to spend time with, well, that was no more. So every new season that you embark upon, it brings with it particular losses. You need to acknowledge those losses. You need to grieve those losses. There's also new gains. So how do you remain present to this season? Well, you acknowledge and you express what has been lost, but you also express what you have gained as you step into this new season. So essentially, you're aware of your life and where you are, and that which is no more, but that which is now beginning. Think about rituals. We've kind of lost the art of rituals in our society, but for ancient societies, think about it. Whenever boys turned a certain age and they become men, there was a certain ritual that they would undergo. So they would go off, they would travel off into the woods, they would have a vision quest, they would go off with the men, they would go hunting. The women, they would have their own rituals as young women became full women. So we used to have these rituals, but we've sort of lost the art of the ritual. I remember when I was in seminary, one of my professors, he would have these rituals that he would have all of us participate in. And he would call these manhood or womanhood rituals because he wanted to reclaim the art of the ritual. He said, this is a very, very important part of being human. And a ritual, it signifies, again, leaving something in the past and stepping into something new. So what he would do is he would have these manhood, womanhood rituals, and he would get each of us to stand right here, facing some wall, and there would be this channel that you would pass through. And then on either end of the channel would be the different people in the class or anyone else that you would invite to this ritual. And then you would just slowly work your way in between each of the people. And as you walked through this line, everyone who was there, they would lay their hand on you, and then they would speak a blessing over you, or they would say a prayer over you. And it signified the leaving behind of one way of being, one way of thinking, and now embracing a whole new way of being. I mean, this guy was big on, you need to update the files. He would often ask the question, how old are you in your mind? You might be 32 physically, but in your mind, you're still 16. You might be 45, but in your mind, you're still 21. He would constantly ask this question, how old are you in your mind? So for him, this ritual was allowing that age you were in your mind to actually catch up with how old you were physically. And it was you saying, I am embracing my age. I am embracing this season of life that I'm in. And he had other people who would bless you forward into that season. So maybe you need to participate in a ritual. Maybe you need to gather some friends, you need to get some people, and there's a season that you have left behind, but you haven't fully left it behind yet. And so you need to get some people who can help you move forward and stop stepping into different seasons, but fully embrace the season that you're in. Then, how else do we fully embrace this season? You discern what this season is asking of you. Every season has an invitation. Every season has different opportunities. What are the invitations of this season that you're in? What are the opportunities that the Spirit is offering to you in this season? We started this series by looking at Jesus in the wilderness. 40 days, Jesus was in the wilderness as he prepared for his ministry. Jesus was discerning what the next meant for him. He had no public ministry up until that point. Then, after his baptism, he goes into the wilderness in order to prepare and begin the new season of his life. We see this time and again. We saw it last week with Elijah. 40, this season of Lent, it's a time for us to reflect, to ask ourselves, what season is my life in? And what are the opportunities that God is presenting to me? The invitations for me to step into. Think about David in the cave. He was developing character, a very important aspect of being a king, I would think. If there's someone who's ruling over you, you want that person to have some character. We all know what it's like when there's someone who is leading and they don't have character. David was developing leadership skills as he dealt with his men. No. We're not going to do this right now. He was learning how to lead, how to get others to follow him, his example, his way of following God. David was developing mercy, another great trait for a leader. He was developing patience. If David decided that he would kill Saul in that moment, he wouldn't have grown in these characteristics. But he said, I'm going to trust God in this season of my life. I'm going to trust that God is with me, that God is developing something within me right now that will prepare me for whatever comes next. The seeds of the next season that your life will be in, they're being sown right now. And as we are attentive to what we are being invited into, the opportunities right now, we are being prepared for whatever happens to come next. So here are the 3 truths about seasons. You can't force or rush your way out of a season. You will only see the gifts of this season if you remain present to it, and you have to leave the previous season behind before you can fully embrace the new season. Now, this Wednesday, we will talk all about seasons as we discern together and help each other figure out what season our lives happen to be in. As we ask the question, well, what opportunities are being presented right now? And so we'll help each other with this process. Would love to have you join us 7 p.m. Hawthorne in person, or join us online as we talk about seasons.